The pen hit the mahogany table with a sharp crack that silenced the room. "Sign it, Ethan. Tonight." Marcus Harrington didn't look up from his tablet. His voice carried the kind of authority that came from 30 years of closing deals and crushing competitors. Across the table, his son-in-law sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes calm. Too calm for a man being asked to end his marriage. Ethan Cole had learned long ago that silence was a weapon. While Marcus's daughter, Vanessa, shifted uncomfortably in her chair, and while Marcus's other daughter, Simone, smirked from the corner of the room, Ethan simply waited. He'd been waiting for 3 years. He could wait 3 more minutes. "Did you hear me?" Marcus leaned forward now, his expensive cologne cutting through the tension. "This family has been patient. We gave you a chance. You've done nothing with it." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "I heard you." "Then why are you still sitting there like you have options?" Simone's voice dripped with contempt. She was younger than Vanessa by 2 years but infinitely sharper with her cruelty. "You don't work. You don't contribute. You're a ghost in this house. The only thing you do consistently is embarrass us." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, maybe we should discuss this privately." "No." Marcus cut her off with a single word. "He needs to understand. This isn't personal, Ethan. It's business. You're a liability. My accountant asked me last week why I'm supporting a grown man who doesn't generate income. What was I supposed to tell him?" Ethan let the question hang in the air. He could have answered. He could have explained that he'd been deliberately invisible, deliberately insignificant, for reasons none of them would believe. But explanations were for people who needed approval. Ethan had stopped needing that a long time ago. Instead, he asked, "What's the offer?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "What?" "The divorce settlement." "What's the offer?" Ethan's tone was clinical, detached. It unnerved Simone enough that her smirk faltered. Marcus recovered quickly. 50,000. Cash. You leave tonight, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we never hear from you again. $50,000. It was an insult, of course. They knew it. He knew it. But Ethan didn't flinch. He simply nodded once, slowly, as if considering a reasonable business proposition. "I'll think about it." The room exploded. "Think about it?" Simone was on her feet now, her voice shrill. "You'll think about it? You should be on your knees thanking us for not throwing you out with nothing." Marcus raised a hand, silencing her, but his eyes never left Ethan. There was something in them now, suspicion, maybe even a flicker of doubt. Men like Marcus Harrington didn't get where they were by ignoring gut feelings. And his gut was telling him that Ethan Cole wasn't behaving like a man backed into a corner. "You have until Friday," Marcus said slowly. "After that, the offer drops to 25. Ethan stood, buttoned his jacket, a simple, well-fitted piece that Simone had once mocked as thrift store chic, and walked toward the door. Vanessa reached for his arm as he passed, but he didn't stop. He couldn't afford to. Not yet. As the door clicked shut behind him, Simone turned to her father. "He's bluffing. He has nowhere to go." Marcus didn't respond. He was staring at the door, his mind running calculations he couldn't quite complete. Ethan walked through the Harrington estate's marbled hallways without looking back. The house was a monument to old money and older arrogance. 16,000 square feet of imported stone, custom art, and the kind of silence that only wealth could buy. He'd lived here for 3 years and had never felt at home. That was intentional. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A single message, no name attached. "Board meeting confirmed. Thursday, 9 a.m. Ethan deleted it without replying. Thursday was 2 days before Marcus's deadline. The timing was almost poetic. He stepped out into the cool night air and allowed himself the smallest of smiles. They thought they were pressuring him. They thought they were in control. They had no idea that every conversation, every insult, Every dismissive glance had been feeding information into a machine they didn't know existed. Ethan had been buying their company, piece by piece, share by share, through intermediaries, shell corporations, and offshore accounts that would take a forensic accountant 6 months to trace. And even then, they'd only find more layers. The Harrington Group was worth $400 million on paper. In reality, it was leveraged to the teeth, propped up by loans that were coming due and partnerships that were about to dissolve. Marcus had been a brilliant businessman once. But he'd gotten lazy. Comfortable. He'd started believing his own press. Ethan had spent 3 years studying every crack in the foundation. And now, those cracks were about to become chasms. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call. He answered on the second ring. "Talk to me." The voice on the other end was clipped, efficient. The Hendricks contract fell through. They're citing concerns about leadership stability. Ethan's smile widened. Hendricks Industrial was the Harrington Group's largest client. Losing them would trigger a domino effect that Marcus couldn't stop. And the board? 3 votes secured. 2 more leaning. Harrington doesn't know yet. Good. Keep it that way. He ended the call and stood for a moment, looking back at the estate. Lights glowed in the upper windows where Marcus was probably pouring himself a scotch, convinced he'd handled the Ethan problem. Simone was likely texting her friends, laughing about the confrontation. And Vanessa was probably crying. That part stung. Not much, but enough. Ethan had loved her once. Or thought he did. It was hard to remember now, buried under 3 years of enabling silence. She'd never defended him. Not once. Not when Simone called him a freeloader at Christmas dinner. Not when Marcus told his business partners that Ethan was between opportunities, with a smirk that said unemployable. Not when her mother suggested, loudly and in front of the household staff, that Vanessa could do better if she had the courage. Vanessa had chosen comfort over loyalty. And Ethan had chosen to remember that. He walked to his car, a modest sedan that Simone had once photographed and posted online with the caption, "When you marry down and the down keeps downing." The post had gotten 2,000 likes. Ethan had screenshotted it. Not out of hurt, but because it was evidence. Evidence that they'd underestimated him so completely that they'd documented their own arrogance. As he drove away from the estate, his phone rang a third time. This number he recognized. Marcus Cole. The voice was older, rougher, shadowed by decades of decisions that left scars. "It's time." Ethan exhaled slowly. Marcus Cole, no relation to the Harringtons, was the closest thing Ethan had to family. A man who'd built an empire, lost everything, and then rebuilt it in the shadows. A man who'd taught Ethan that power wasn't loud. It was patient. "I know," Ethan said. "They're going to come after you. You understand that, don't you? Once they realize what's happening, they'll try to destroy you. Let them try." There was a pause. Then, a low chuckle. "You sound like me 30 years ago. That's either very good or very dangerous. It's both. Then don't lose yourself in it, son. Revenge is expensive. Make sure you can afford the cost." The line went dead. Ethan drove in silence, the city lights blurring past. He thought about Marcus Cole's warning. He thought about Vanessa's tears. He thought about the $50,000 insult, and the board meeting that would change everything. And then he stopped thinking altogether. Because thinking was for people who had doubts. Ethan Cole had none. By the time he pulled into the parking garage of his Rio residence, a sleek, minimalist penthouse in the financial district that no one in the Harrington family knew existed, his mind was already 3 moves ahead. Thursday's board meeting would be the beginning. The Hendricks contract collapse would be the accelerant. And Marcus Harrington's arrogance would be the fuse. Ethan stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 32nd floor, and allowed himself one final thought before the doors closed. They wanted him gone by Friday. He'd be gone by Thursday. But he wouldn't be leaving alone. The conference room on the 34th floor of the Meridian Tower smelled like leather and desperation. Ethan arrived at 8:45, 15 minutes early. The receptionist, a young woman named Claire who'd worked there for 6 months, smiled when she saw him. She was one of 3 people in the building who knew his real name. Everyone else knew him as Mr. Chen's representative. Mr. Chen didn't exist, but his signature was on enough documents to make him very real on paper. "They're waiting for you," Claire said, handing him a tablet. "Mr. Harrington called twice this morning. He sounds stressed. He should be." Ethan walked past her into the glass-walled room where 5 men and 2 women sat around a table that cost more than most people's cars. These were the board members of the Harrington Group. Individually, they were intelligent, successful people. Collectively, they were about to make the easiest decision of their careers. "Gentlemen, ladies," Ethan set his briefcase down and remained standing. Power dynamics started with posture. "Thank you for making time." Gerald Voss, the oldest member of the board and Marcus Harrington's closest ally, frowned. "We were told this was urgent. We were also told it concerned the Hendricks contract." "It does. Then where's Marcus? Why isn't he here?" Ethan smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because Marcus doesn't know this meeting is happening." The room went silent. Angela Reeves, the CFO, leaned forward. She was sharp, methodical, and, according to Ethan's research, quietly furious about being passed over for CEO 3 years ago when Marcus's father retired. "Explain." Ethan opened his briefcase and placed a single document on the table. "This is a verified termination notice from Hendricks Industrial. They're pulling their contract effective immediately. That's $42 million in annual revenue. Gone." Gerald snatched the paper, his face reddening as he read. "This is, how did you get this?" "I didn't get it. I caused it." The silence deepened. Someone's pen dropped. It clattered against the table like a gunshot. Angela's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been paying attention while the rest of you were trusting Marcus to keep this company solvent." Ethan pulled out his tablet and swiped through a series of documents, projecting them onto the screen behind him. "The Harrington Group is carrying $320 million in debt. Your credit lines are maxed. Your liquidity ratio is 0.42, which means you can't cover short-term obligations without selling assets. And your largest client just walked away." Gerald stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "You have no authority to be here. You're not a board member. You're not even. I own 11% of this company." The room froze. Ethan let that settle for 3 seconds. Then he continued. "I've been acquiring shares for 2 years through intermediaries. Small purchases. Nothing that triggered disclosure requirements. But as of last week, I crossed the 10% threshold. Which means I have the right to call this meeting. And I have the right to demand answers." Angela was the first to recover. 11% isn't controlling. No. But it's enough to block a vote of confidence. And right now, Marcus needs one. He pulled up another document. This one showed a web of loans, refinancing agreements, and payment schedules. Marcus has been kiting expenses. Borrowing from one line of credit to pay another. It's a shell game, and it's about to collapse. When Hendricks pulls out, your creditors will panic. They'll call the loans. And you'll be insolvent within 90 days. That's speculation, Gerald said, but his voice had lost its edge. It's math. Angela studied the screen, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at Ethan. "What do you want?" "I want Marcus Harrington removed as CEO. I want a full audit of the company's finances. And I want a restructuring plan that doesn't involve liquidation. And if we refuse?" Ethan closed his briefcase. "Then I sell my shares to a competitor. Someone who'd love to pick apart this company for scrap. You'll lose your jobs, your reputations, and your severance packages. Or you can work with me, stabilize the ship, and come out of this with your careers intact. Gerald was shaking now, his hands gripping the table. You arrogant. Realistic. Ethan interrupted. I'm being realistic. You've been coasting on legacy and luck. That ends today. Angela stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city for a long moment. When she turned back, her face was calm. I want to see the full acquisition records. Every share purchase. Every entity involved. You'll have them by end of business. She nodded slowly. Then I'm in. One by one, the others followed. Even Gerald, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes, finally muttered his agreement. Ethan left the building at 10:30. By 11, Marcus Harrington's phone was ringing off the hook. Ethan didn't go back to the estate. Instead, he drove to a small cafe in a neighborhood where no one from the Harrington circle would ever set foot. It was the kind of place with mismatched chairs and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed with anger. He liked it. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Where are you? Dad is losing his mind. What did you do? Ethan stared at the message for a long moment. He could hear her voice in the words, confused, accusatory, but also afraid. She knew something had shifted. She just didn't know how much. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened his laptop and reviewed the next phase. The Hendricks contract was just the beginning. Tomorrow, 2 more clients would receive anonymous tips about the Harrington Group's financial instability. By Monday, the trade publications would be running stories. By Tuesday, the stock price would drop 15%. And by Wednesday, Marcus Harrington would be begging the board to let him stay. Ethan's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he answered anyway. Ethan Cole? The voice was female, clipped, professional. Speaking. My name is Diane Mercer. I'm an attorney representing the Harrington family. I've been instructed to inform you that any further interference with Harrington Group business will result in immediate legal action. Ethan smiled. On what grounds? Tortious interference. Corporate espionage. Fraud. Interesting. Do you have evidence for any of those claims? There was a pause. We're prepared to pursue all available remedies. Then I'll expect the complaint by end of week. Make sure it's thorough. I'd hate for Marcus to waste money on a lawsuit he can't win. He hung up. The threat was expected. Marcus was a brawler when cornered. But threats only worked if the other person was afraid. And Ethan had stopped being afraid the day he realized that patience was a form of violence. That evening, Ethan received a visitor. He was back at the penthouse, reviewing financial projections, when the front desk called. Sir, there's a Ms. Harrington here to see you. Ethan closed his laptop. Send her up. 2 minutes later, Vanessa stepped out of the elevator. She looked exhausted, eyes red, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a way that suggested she'd stopped caring hours ago. So this is where you've been living? Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. Yes. She walked through the penthouse slowly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist furniture, the art on the walls. How long? 3 years. 3 years. She laughed, but it was hollow. You've been living here for 3 years while I thought you were staying in the guest house because you couldn't afford anything else. You thought what you wanted to think. She turned to face him, and for the first time in their marriage, Ethan saw something in her eyes that wasn't pity or disappointment. It was anger. You lied to me. I omitted. There's a difference. Not to me. Ethan poured himself a drink, bourbon, neat, and offered her one. She shook her head. Why? She asked. Why did you let us treat you like that? Because I needed to see who you were when you thought I was nothing. The words hung between them like a verdict. Vanessa's face crumpled. That's cruel. So is silence. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking. My father is talking about suing you. Simone wants to hire a private investigator. And my mother thinks you're dangerous. Your mother is smarter than I gave her credit for. Ethan, please. Vanessa's voice cracked. Whatever you're doing, stop. We can fix this. We can. Fix what? Ethan's tone was ice. Your family's bankruptcy? Your father's incompetence? Or the fact that you stood by and watched them humiliate me for 3 years without saying a word? I didn't know what to say. You could have said something. Anything. Ethan set his glass down. But you chose them. Every single time. Vanessa was crying now, openly. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The version that didn't embarrass you. That's not fair. Fair? Ethan's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair, Vanessa. Fair is consequences. Fair is reaping what you sow, and your family has sown nothing but arrogance and cruelty. Now they're going to harvest it. She stood, wiping her eyes. I came here to warn you. My father is dangerous when he's cornered. He'll destroy you if he can. Let him try. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw the exact second she realized she didn't know him at all. Maybe she never had. I'm filing for divorce, she said quietly. I'll sign the papers. She left without another word. Ethan stood at the window, watching the city lights blur into constellations of ambition and regret. Somewhere out there, Marcus Harrington was making calls, pulling strings, trying to stop a collapse he couldn't see coming. But Ethan could see it. He'd designed it. Every piece, every move, every calculated risk. And it was beautiful. Friday morning arrived with the kind of silence that preceded disasters. Ethan woke at 5, ran 6 miles, and reviewed the overnight reports while his coffee brewed. 3 more board members had called emergency meetings with their attorneys. The Harrington Group's stock had dropped 9% in after-hours trading, and Marcus Harrington had tried to call him 14 times. Ethan deleted the voicemails without listening. At 7:30, his phone rang with a number he'd been expecting. Mr. Cole. The voice belonged to Richardson, the actual Richardson this time, a private equity specialist who'd helped structure half of Ethan's shell companies. The wire transfers cleared. You now control 18%. Ethan set down his coffee. Confirmed? Confirmed. You're the second largest shareholder. Marcus still holds 22% through the family trust, but 4% of that is in Vanessa's name. If she sells, she won't. You sound certain. I am. There was a pause. The board meeting is set for Monday. Marcus will try to consolidate power before then. He's already reaching out to institutional investors. Let him. They'll want to see financials first. And when they do, Ethan smiled. They'll run. He ended the call and dressed methodically, charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. He looked like money that didn't need to announce itself. By 8:15, he was in his car. By 9, he was sitting in a restaurant 3 blocks from the Harrington estate, waiting. Simone arrived at 9:20. She swept into the restaurant like she owned it, designer bags swinging, heels clicking against marble. She spotted Ethan immediately and her expression curdled. You have some nerve calling me. Sit down, Simone. I'm not sitting anywhere with you. My father told me what you're trying to do. It's pathetic. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. Something in his voice made her hesitate. Then, with visible irritation, she sat. You have 2 minutes, she said. Ethan slid a folder across the table. Open it. She did. Her face went white. Inside were photographs. Simone at a resort in Monaco, charging $70,000 to her father's corporate card. Simone at a private auction, bidding on art with company funds. Simone's signature on expense reports that listed business development, but showed receipts from nightclubs and luxury boutiques. Where did you get these? Her voice was barely a whisper. I've been paying attention. This is illegal. You can't. I can. And I will. Unless you do exactly what I tell you. Simone's hands were shaking. What do you want? Your shares. All 4%. You're going to sell them to me at market price. She laughed, high and desperate. You're insane. My father will never allow it. Your father is about to have much bigger problems than your spending habits. But if you'd like, I can send these to the IRS. Corporate fraud carries a nice prison sentence. The color drained from her face completely. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time in 3 years, Simone Harrington had nothing to say. She sat there, trapped between pride and panic, and Ethan watched her crumble with the same detachment he'd used to observe a stock ticker. I need time, she finally whispered. You have until Monday morning. After that, the offer expires and the documents go public. He stood, dropped 2 20s on the table for coffee she hadn't touched, and walked out. By Saturday, the pressure had become unbearable. Ethan knew because his phone wouldn't stop ringing. Vanessa called twice. Her mother called once. Even Gerald Voss, the board member who'd called him arrogant, left a voicemail asking to discuss options privately. Ethan ignored them all. Instead, he spent the day at Marcus Cole's estate, a sprawling property in the mountains where the old man had retreated after his own empire collapsed decades ago. They sat on the back porch, overlooking a valley that stretched for miles, and drank whiskey that cost more than most people's rent. You're enjoying this, Marcus Cole said. It wasn't a question. I'm completing it. There's a difference between justice and cruelty, son. Ethan stared out at the valley. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting they look the same. Marcus Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I destroyed a man once. Someone who betrayed me. Cost me everything. I rebuilt, but I also made sure he never worked again. Blacklisted him. Ruined his reputation. Took his house, his savings, everything. Sounds fair. It was. Until I found out he had a daughter. 16 years old. Full academic scholarship to Yale. Lost it when the scandal hit. Ended up working 2 jobs to survive. Marcus took a slow sip of whiskey. She didn't betray me. Her father did. But she paid anyway. Ethan said nothing. I'm not telling you to stop. Marcus continued. I'm telling you to know what you're doing. Because collateral damage doesn't announce itself. It shows up later, in places you didn't expect, and it costs more than you planned to pay. Ethan thought about Vanessa. About the tears in her eyes when she'd said she loved him. About the fact that part of him, small, buried, but still alive, had wanted to believe her. I'll keep that in mind, he said. Sunday was the calm before the storm. Ethan spent it alone, reviewing every document, every transaction, every move he'd made over the past 2 years. He was looking for gaps, weaknesses, anything Marcus Harrington could exploit. He found none. At 6 p.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Rooftop. 30 minutes. Come alone. Ethan stared at the message, then checked the origin. It had been routed through 3 proxy servers, but the final location pinged back to the Harrington estate. Marcus wanted to meet. Ethan arrived at the building, a half-finished commercial development that the Harrington Group had abandoned when funding dried up, and took the service elevator to the roof. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of amber and rust. Marcus Harrington was standing near the edge, hands in his pockets, looking every one of his 62 years. I knew you'd come, Marcus said without turning around. You made it hard to refuse. Marcus finally turned, and Ethan saw something in his face he hadn't expected, exhaustion. Not anger. Not arrogance. Just bone-deep fatigue. I underestimated you, Marcus said. I'll admit that. That's generous. It's true. Marcus walked closer, his footsteps echoing on the concrete. You played me. Played all of us. And you did it so quietly we didn't even know the game had started. You invited me to play the moment you treated me like I was nothing. Marcus nodded slowly. Fair. But here's the thing, Ethan. You can take the company. You can destroy my reputation. You can bankrupt me. But you can't erase what this will do to Vanessa. Vanessa made her choices. She's my daughter. And I was your son-in-law. Did that matter when you offered me $50,000 to disappear? Marcus flinched. It was subtle, but Ethan saw it. I'm not asking you to stop, Marcus said quietly. I'm asking you to let her out of it. The divorce, the shares in her name, the trust fund, leave it alone. Take everything else. But let her walk away clean. Ethan studied him. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a father begging. Why should I? Because you're better than this. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. I know you are. I've seen the way you move, the way you think. You're not doing this for money. You're doing it for respect. And you've already won that. Everyone who matters knows what you're capable of now. Everyone who matters spent 3 years treating me like I was invisible. And they were wrong. I was wrong. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes searching Ethan's face. But punishing Vanessa for my mistakes won't fix what happened to you. It'll just make you the kind of man you hated me for being. The words hit harder than Ethan wanted to admit. He thought about Vanessa's face when she'd stood in his penthouse, broken and confused. He thought about the years she'd stayed silent, yes, but also about the small moments. The way she defended him once, quietly, to her mother when she thought he couldn't hear. The way she cried after Simone's cruelest jokes. She'd been weak. But she hadn't been malicious. I'll think about it, Ethan said. Marcus nodded. That's all I'm asking. As Ethan turned to leave, Marcus called out. One more thing. Ethan stopped. Whatever happens Monday, I want you to know, I respect you. I don't like you, but I respect you. Ethan didn't respond. He just walked away. Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. The Harrington Group board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9:30, the conference room was packed. Board members, attorneys, financial advisors, and a stenographer recording every word. Marcus Harrington sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of composure. But Ethan could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands when he reached for his water glass. Simone had sold her shares. The transfer had cleared at 8 a.m. Ethan now controlled 22% of the company, exactly equal to Marcus's stake. The meeting was called to order. Angela Reeves stood first. Before we begin, I want to address the elephant in the room. This company is in crisis. We've lost our largest client. Our debt obligations are unsustainable. And our leadership has been called into question. Marcus leaned forward. I've weathered crises before. This is no different. It is different, Angela said coldly. Because this time, the crisis is you. The room went silent. She pulled up a presentation, one Ethan had helped prepare. It showed 3 years of financial mismanagement, over-leveraged assets, and creative accounting that skirted legal boundaries. You've been gambling with this company's future, Angela said. And you've lost. Marcus's attorney stood. This is a coordinated attack. Mr. Cole has been manipulating. Mr. Cole has been investing. Angela interrupted. Which is more than I can say for the rest of us. Gerald Voss, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. I move for a vote of no confidence in Marcus Harrington's leadership. Seconded, said another board member. Marcus's face went rigid. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Gerald's voice was steady. You've run this company into the ground. It's time to step aside. The vote was called. 7 in favor. 2 against. Marcus Harrington was out. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Attorneys conferring, board members whispering, Marcus sitting frozen in his chair. Ethan stood and buttoned his jacket. Mr. Cole, Angela said. The board would like to discuss interim leadership. I'm not interested in being CEO, Ethan said. Hire someone competent. I'll remain a shareholder and advisor." He walked out, leaving them to clean up the wreckage. In the elevator, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Thank you?" He stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Some doors, once closed, stayed that way. The news broke within hours. By 2 p.m., every major financial publication had the story. Harrington Group oust founder's son in dramatic board coup. Mystery investor orchestrates takeover of legacy firm. The fall of Marcus Harrington, how arrogance became liability. Ethan read them all from his penthouse, a glass of bourbon in hand, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just the hollow quiet that followed completed tasks. His phone rang. "Richard Chen. You're trending on 3 platforms," Chen said. "Business Twitter is calling you a ghost. They're trying to figure out who you are. Let them wonder. The SEC might come knocking." This kind of coordinated share acquisition was legal. Every transaction documented. Every disclosure filed on time. They can audit all they want. Chen chuckled. "You really did think of everything." That was the point. After the call ended, Ethan stood at the window and watched the city move below him. Somewhere out there, Marcus Harrington was sitting in his study, staring at the ruins of his legacy. Simone was probably panic-calling her accountant. And Vanessa. Ethan didn't let himself finish that thought. His phone buzzed again. This time, a private number he recognized immediately. "You made the Wall Street Journal." Marcus Cole's voice was dry with amusement. "Front page of the business section." "I saw. How do you feel?" Ethan considered the question. "Empty. That's because revenge doesn't fill anything. It just clears space. What you do with that space is what matters. I'm not looking for a philosophy lesson." "Too bad. You're getting one anyway." Marcus Cole's tone shifted, becoming serious. "You won, Ethan. Decisively. Publicly. But winning isn't the same as healing. And if you're not careful, you'll spend the rest of your life winning battles that don't matter because you're afraid to face the one that does. Which is? Forgiving yourself for staying as long as you did." The line went dead. Ethan set the phone down and returned to the window. Below, the city pulsed with ambition and desperation. Millions of people fighting battles they thought mattered. And maybe they did. Maybe purpose was whatever you convinced yourself it was. But standing there, alone in a penthouse that cost more than most people's retirement, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd won a war and lost something he couldn't name. Tuesday brought the fallout. The Harrington Group's stock plummeted another 12% before trading was halted. Creditors began circling. 3 institutional investors filed lawsuits claiming fraud and misrepresentation. And Marcus Harrington, for the first time in his professional life, issued a public apology. Ethan watched the press conference from his office. Marcus stood at a podium, looking smaller than Ethan remembered, and read from a prepared statement about errors in judgment and taking full responsibility. His voice was steady, but his eyes were defeated. Simone stood behind him, her face carefully blank. Vanessa wasn't there. "The Harrington family has always prided itself on integrity," Marcus read. "I failed to uphold that standard. I failed my employees, my shareholders, and my family. For that, I am deeply sorry." The questions came immediately. "Mr. Harrington, is it true you've been forced out of the company? Mr. Harrington, what's your relationship with Ethan Cole? Mr. Harrington, are you filing for bankruptcy?" Marcus held up a hand. "I won't be taking questions at this time." "Thank you." He walked off the stage to a barrage of shouted inquiries and camera flashes. Ethan closed the live stream. His assistant, an efficient woman named Patricia who'd worked for him for 6 months, knocked on the door. "Mr. Cole, you have a visitor. She says it's urgent." "Name?" "Mrs. Evelyn Harrington." Ethan paused. Vanessa's mother. The woman who'd once told him at a charity gala, loudly enough for others to hear, that some people are meant to serve, not lead. Send her in. Evelyn Harrington entered like she was walking into enemy territory, shoulders back, chin high, every inch the society matriarch. But Ethan noticed the tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes. Mrs. Harrington. Ethan didn't stand. This is unexpected. I'll make this brief. Her voice was clipped. I want to know what it will take for you to stop. Stop what? Don't play games with me. You've destroyed my husband's company. You've humiliated my family. I've corrected a power imbalance. Ethan interrupted. Everything I've done has been legal and earned. Evelyn's composure cracked slightly. Earned? You married into this family with nothing. We gave you a home, a name. You gave me contempt. There's a difference. She was silent for a moment, her jaw working. Then she sat down, uninvited, and Ethan saw something he'd never seen before: vulnerability. My daughter is in the hospital, Evelyn said quietly. Ethan's chest tightened. What? Anxiety attack. Severe. She collapsed yesterday afternoon. The doctors are monitoring her, but... Evelyn's voice wavered. She's not well, Ethan. This has broken her. The room felt smaller suddenly. Which hospital? St. Catherine's. Room 412. Evelyn stood, her eyes meeting his. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm not even asking you to stop what you're doing. I'm asking you, as someone who once loved my daughter, to visit her. She keeps asking for you. Ethan said nothing. Evelyn walked to the door, then paused. You wanted us to see you, Ethan. Congratulations. We do. But I hope you can live with what we see. She left. Ethan sat motionless for 10 minutes. Then he grabbed his coat and walked out. St. Catherine's Hospital smelled like antiseptic and false hope. Ethan took the elevator to the 4th floor, his mind racing. He'd prepared for every scenario except this one. He'd calculated every angle, every consequence, every move. But he hadn't calculated what it would feel like to stand outside Vanessa's hospital room, knowing he'd put her there. He pushed open the door. Vanessa was asleep, her face pale against white sheets. And 4 drip fed into her arm. Monitors beeped softly. She looked fragile in a way that made Ethan's throat tight. He sat in the chair beside the bed and waited. 20 minutes later, her eyes fluttered open. It took her a moment to focus, and when she did, tears immediately started falling. You came, she whispered. Your mother asked me to. I didn't think you would. Her voice was hoarse. I didn't think you cared anymore. Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. So he asked, What happened? I couldn't breathe. Everything just collapsed. The divorce papers, my father, the company, it all hit at once and I couldn't. She trailed off, wiping her eyes. The doctors say it's stress. That I need to rest. But how do you rest when your entire life is falling apart? You rebuild. She laughed bitterly. That's easy for you to say. You planned this. You knew exactly what was going to happen. I'm just collateral damage. The words echoed Marcus Cole's warning. Collateral damage doesn't announce itself. I didn't want this for you, Ethan said quietly. But you knew it would happen anyway. He couldn't argue with that. Vanessa turned her head to look at him fully. Did you ever love me? Or was I always just part of the plan? Ethan thought about the early days. The way she'd smiled when they first met. The conversations they'd had about art and ambition. The version of her that existed before the weight of her family's expectations crushed everything soft in her. I loved who you could have been, he said. That's not the same thing. No. It's not. She closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her temples. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not standing up for you. For choosing comfort over courage. For being too weak to be the person you needed. Vanessa. I mean it. You deserve better. And I failed you. She opened her eyes again, and they were clear despite the tears. But you failed me too. Ethan went still. You let me believe you were helpless. Vanessa continued. You let me pity you. And then you punished me for it. That's not justice, Ethan. That's cruelty. The words landed like physical blows. You're right, Ethan said after a long silence. Vanessa blinked, surprised. What? You're right. I manipulated you. I used your family's contempt as cover, and I let you think I needed saving when I didn't. That wasn't fair. So why did you do it? Because I needed to know who you were when I couldn't give you anything. Ethan leaned forward. And I found out. You chose safety. Every time. And you chose revenge. Yes. They sat in silence, two people who'd once shared a life now separated by choices neither could undo. Finally, Vanessa said, I'm signing the divorce papers. No contest. I don't want your money or your shares or anything else. I just want to be done. Okay. And Ethan? She looked at him one last time. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do. Because this. She gestured vaguely at the room, at herself, at everything that had happened. This isn't it. Ethan stood, his throat tight. I'm sorry. For what it's worth. It's worth something. Just not enough. He left without looking back. In the elevator, Ethan's hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs until they stopped, then pulled out his phone and made a call. Richard. I want you to set up a trust fund. $2 million. Beneficiary is Vanessa Harrington. Anonymous. She's not to know it's from me. That's generous, considering. Just do it. Done. Ethan ended the call and leaned against the elevator wall. Marcus Cole was right. Revenge didn't fill anything. It just cleared space. And now Ethan had to figure out what to do with all this empty space he'd created. Wednesday morning, Angela Reeves called an emergency meeting. The Harrington Group had found a buyer, a private equity firm willing to inject capital in exchange for majority control. The deal would save the company but strip the Harrington name from everything. It's the best option we have, Angela explained to the remaining board members. We restructure, rebrand, and survive. What happens to existing shareholders? Someone asked. Diluted. But not eliminated. Mr. Cole, you'd retain approximately 8% after the deal closes. Ethan nodded. I'm fine with that. You're fine with giving up control? Gerald Voss looked suspicious. I never wanted control. I wanted accountability. The vote passed unanimously. By Friday, the deal was signed. The Harrington Group became Meridian Capital Partners. Marcus Harrington retained a consulting position, powerless but paid. Simone was quietly removed from all company roles. And Ethan walked away with an 8% stake worth approximately $32 million. He'd spent 2 years and $11 million acquiring shares. The return on investment was excellent. The cost was harder to calculate. That evening, Ethan sat in Marcus Cole's study, the old man pouring whiskey like he was conducting a ceremony. So it's done, Marcus said. It's done. And how do you feel? Ethan considered the question. Like I won a war nobody asked me to fight. Marcus smiled. That's the most honest thing you've said in weeks. What now? Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. The one who destroys because he was destroyed? Or the one who builds because he knows what destruction costs? Ethan sipped his whiskey. What did you choose? Both. At different times. Marcus settled into his chair. The trick is knowing which one the moment requires. They sat in comfortable silence, two men who'd walked similar paths and arrived at different conclusions. Finally, Ethan said, I'm thinking about starting something new. Venture capital, maybe. Investing in people who get overlooked. Marcus raised his glass. That sounds like building. Yeah. It does. They drank to that. 6 months later, Ethan stood in front of a room full of entrepreneurs who looked exactly like he once did, hungry, overlooked, Underestimated. The venture capital firm he'd founded, Ascent Partners, occupied the 15th floor of a building in the financial district. The walls were glass. The furniture was minimal. And the mission statement, framed in the reception area, read, "We invest in people the world hasn't learned to see yet." Today's pitch session featured 12 founders. 8 had been rejected by traditional VCs. 4 had never even tried, assuming they wouldn't be taken seriously. Ethan listened to each presentation with the kind of attention he'd once craved and never received. He asked questions that weren't designed to intimidate but to clarify. And when he made offers, he structured them to preserve founder equity and autonomy. "This isn't charity," he told a young woman who'd built an algorithm for detecting financial fraud. "This is a bet on your capability. Don't prove me right. Prove yourself right." She signed the term sheet with shaking hands. By 5 p.m., Ethan had committed $8 million across 6 companies. Richard Chin, who now served as Ascent's CFO, whistled low when he saw the numbers. "You're going to give yourself a reputation for being soft. Good. Let people underestimate me again. Worked well last time." Chin laughed. "Fair point." As the office emptied, Ethan's assistant Patricia approached with an envelope. "This came by courier. Marked personal." Ethan opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Ethan, I'm getting remarried. Thought you should know. Not because I think you care, but because I wanted you to hear it from me. His name is David. He's a teacher. Makes $43,000 a year and thinks I'm extraordinary. Turns out that matters more than I thought. I hope you find someone who sees you the same way. Not for what you can do, but for who you are. V." Ethan read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He was happy for her. Genuinely. It surprised him how much. That evening, Ethan attended a gala for a nonprofit that funded scholarships for first-generation college students. He donated $500,000 anonymously, but the executive director had tracked him down and insisted he attend. "People need to see success stories," she'd said. "Especially ones that don't fit the usual narrative." So Ethan went, uncomfortable in his tuxedo, surrounded by people who treated charity like a competitive sport. He was standing near the bar, debating an early exit, when someone tapped his shoulder. "Ethan Cole?" He turned. The woman was around his age, dark skin, sharp eyes, wearing a dress that was elegant without trying too hard. She looked vaguely familiar. "Do we know each other?" "Not exactly. But I know who you are." She extended her hand. "Dr. Maya Winters. I run a health clinic in Westmont. You shut down my landlord's predatory lending scheme about 4 months ago." Ethan shook her hand. "That was business. The properties were overleveraged and the loan terms were illegal. Well, your business saved my clinic. Rent dropped 40% when the new management took over." She smiled. "So thank you." "You're welcome." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, then Maya said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why'd you do it?" "The Harrington takedown, I mean. Everyone's got theories, but I'm curious what the real reason was." Ethan considered deflecting, but something about her directness made him answer honestly. "I wanted them to see me. And I wanted to prove that being underestimated was their mistake, not my limitation." Maya nodded slowly. "Did it work?" "Yes." "Did it fix anything?" Ethan smiled. "No. That's what I thought." She took a sip of her wine. "Revenge is like surgery. Sometimes necessary, but it always leaves scars. You sound like someone I know. Smart person, probably." They talked for another hour. About her clinic, about the neighborhood she served, about the impossible math of trying to provide healthcare to people who couldn't afford it. She was brilliant and frustrated and absolutely unwilling to give up. Ethan found himself genuinely engaged in a way he hadn't been in months. When the gala ended, he walked her to her car. "Can I ask you something now?" Ethan said. Fair's fair. Your clinic. What would it take to expand it? Maya laughed. About $3 million, a miracle, and possibly divine intervention. What if I could get you 2 of those 3 things? She stopped walking. Are you serious? I'm always serious about investments. Send me your business plan. I don't have investors. I have grants and donations and now you have an investor. If the numbers work. Ethan pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Send it by Monday. Maya stared at the card, then at him. Why would you do this? Because you're trying to fix something broken instead of just profiting from it. That's rare. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Ethan think maybe Marcus Cole had been right. Maybe what you did with the empty space mattered more than how you cleared it. I'll send it tomorrow, Maya said. Good. As he drove home that night, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Cole. Saw you made the society pages. Gala photo. You looked miserable. Progress. Ethan smiled and typed back. Learning to build. Slowly. The response came immediately. That's all any of us can do. Ethan pulled up to his building and sat in the car for a moment, watching the city lights reflect off the glass towers. Somewhere out there, Marcus Harrington was probably sitting in a smaller house, living a quieter life, learning what it meant to be humbled. Simone was likely reinventing herself, hopefully with more humility. And Vanessa was building something real with someone who saw her. They'd all moved forward, just in different directions. Ethan thought about the past 3 years, the humiliation, the patience, the calculated revenge, the hollow victory, and finally, the slow work of becoming someone who built instead of destroyed. It wasn't a neat story. It didn't end with triumphant music or perfect closure. But it was honest. And maybe that was enough. Ethan stepped out of the car, looked up at the building that represented everything he fought for, and realized something important. He didn't need it to mean anything anymore. He'd already proven what he needed to prove. Now he could just live. And build. And maybe eventually heal. The lobby doors closed behind him with a soft click, and Ethan Cole, no longer invisible, no longer overlooked, no longer defined by other people's limitations, walked toward whatever came next. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed a complete transformation. From humiliation to power. From invisibility to influence. From revenge to redemption. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me what you thought about Ethan's journey, and smash that like button. There are more stories like this coming, stories about people who were counted out and came back stronger. Stories about patience, power, and the price of both. Don't miss them. Until next time, remember, being underestimated isn't your weakness. It's their mistake.